You need to bench Kenneth Walker ahead of week 7. We'll tell you why next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Michael Fabiano. And on today's show, we're going over the top starts and sits ahead of week 7. We had a fantastic Thursday night football game. So, Fabs, let's get into some of the guys that you want to make sure are in your lineup and some of the ones that you want out of your lineup this week. And I want to start with Kenneth Walker, who I have in a lot of my dynasty leagues, redraft leagues. He's in some of my big money leagues. He's looked awesome, like whenever you watch him this year. But why aren't you starting him this week?
Usage. And I don't understand it because he is more efficient, more effective than Zach Charbonnet. But for some reason, Clint Kubiak has a thing for Charbonnet. So let's look at last week's data. 14 fewer snaps played. 7 fewer routes run. We're talking about Walker versus Charbonnet. Walker has seen his touch share under 27% in 2 straight games. And in those 2 games, he scored 14.3 points per. Overall, combined. It's been bad. But he looks like the better back. The Seattle Seahawks have gone completely RBBC, which is, I could use another 4-letter word to describe my feelings for that. It's just bad. And then you got Houston. They've allowed one running back to score more than 15 points against them this year. Just one. Their defense is really good. And so when you combine all this, Marcus, I still have Walker ranked ahead of Charbonnet because I'm stubborn, but it's not that much higher. It's probably a player or two. And if I have depth, like if I have Bill Krosky merit, I'm sitting Kenneth Walker this week, and I hate it. It sucks because he's such a talented player. But we're 6 weeks in. We have 6 weeks of data. And that 6 weeks of data tells us what? Zach Charbonnet has put maybe not a death blow, but certainly he has put a massive, massive dent into Kenneth Walker's fantasy value.
And I saw a couple of reports on Thursday that the Seahawks have checked in on like Devon Achane in Miami, and it's just making my head explode. Like, you just use Kenneth Walker. He's an awesome player, but I have a hard time disagreeing. Like, even if Kenneth Walker gets 13, 14 carries in this game and looks efficient, he's not getting the red zone opportunities. He's not catching a bunch of balls out of the backfield. You're almost reliant on him scoring a long touchdown. And that's just a really tough spot to be in for an RB2.
It is seriously one of the most disappointing situations in fantasy football this season because I'm a big fan of Ken Walker. I know the injuries have been an issue. Maybe they're trying to lighten his workload so the injuries don't become an issue. I don't know. I'm not obviously out there in practice and in meetings, but the Seahawks are not giving the ball to the best running back in their offense. And I am completely just confused by it. And now I'm at a point where if I do have backfield depth, maybe I could use Walker as a flex. And then, well, in that case, I can replace him with maybe a Terry McLaurin this week, who's expected to be back. Walker was normally just kind of a, set it and forget it player. It's not the case anymore.
All right. So if you're not playing Kenneth Walker this week, who is somebody that you do want to make sure is in your lineup?
Do not concern yourself with the stinker that Quinshon Judkins has last week, because I will promise you right now that he is going to smoke Miami's defense. Last week, 3.6 points, not good, but it was, it's not a situation where this kid hasn't been very good all season long. He had a bad game. It is what it is. Now you've got Miami. They've allowed 5 running backs to beat them for 16 plus points, including 4 with more than 20. And if you haven't seen the weather forecast for Cleveland, they're talking about 40 to 50 mile an hour wind gusts. And that is not good for the kickers or for the quarterbacks and the wide receivers in this game.
Poor Tua
You know
and Dylan Gabriel are
affect
going to get blown
the
out of the
running
stadium.
backs.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to get I can't imagine what it's going to look like trying to throw the ball deep in this game. I think Judkins is last week was tough against Pittsburgh. We kind of know how those games generally go. But I think for the most part, Judkins is somebody that's going to be kind of a set it and forget it player for the remainder of the year. What other running back are you benching this week?
Travis Etienne Jr. is somebody that you probably can't afford to bench, but if you can, I would. Now, the touch share has been solid. In the first 6 weeks, he's been a really good draft bargain, to be quite honest with you. But the last 2 games, 18.3 combined points. The Rams are giving up 3.7 yards per rush, and they've given up the 3rd fewest points to running backs. So just keep that in mind. I know it's hard to sit him, and if you don't have a respectable alternative, you shouldn't. But the numbers on paper are not good for Etienne to put up a solid stat line this week in London.
I think the only way that he becomes, like a top 15 running back this week is if he just catches a bunch of balls out of the backfield. Like that's the one spot the Rams can be got a little bit is their linebackers aren't particularly fast. But again, you're having to rely on almost all of the receiving game production to help you from a fantasy perspective. It's not a great spot to be in. Give us one more running back that you are starting this week.
Jordan Mason. I love the matchup this week. Coming off a bye. They've got Philadelphia. They've given up 15-plus points to running backs 5 times this year. 3 have gone over 20. One's had 31. It's funny because you talk about Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and those defenses, and typically you think, well, those are not great matchups. They actually are. I mean, we saw on Thursday night, Pittsburgh's defense gave it up to Joe Flacco. Chase Brown had the best game he's had in a while. And if you look back at the data with the Eagles, they have given it up to running backs this season. So Jordan Mason without Aaron Jones Sr. is a very good play.
Real quick on Pittsburgh, I don't want to touch too much in the Thursday night game, but Pittsburgh has now allowed 30-plus points to Justin Fields, Sam Darnold, and now Joe Flacco. They had a game against the Patriots in there where the New England only scored 14 points, but they had 5 turnovers.
Yep.
I think Pittsburgh's defense is one where if you have competent quarterback play, you can put up a bunch of points. So it's something to remember here in future weeks.
Not a scary matchup anymore. Same thing with Philadelphia. Same thing with Baltimore. It's kind of the bizarro world this year.
Same thing with Dallas, right?
Well, yeah, Dallas was bad last year, though, too.
Just joking. Give us one quarterback and one quarterback that you are starting and sitting here in week 7.
I'm going to go with Dak Prescott, and obviously this is more for 1 quarterback leagues, which is, I think, the majority. You're getting CeeDee Lamb back this week. The Commanders have allowed 4 quarterbacks to beat them for at least 18 points. Caleb had almost 20 last week. Speaking of Caleb, start him this week against the Saints. Really good matchup. They've allowed the 4th most points to quarterbacks. 4 quarterbacks have beaten New Orleans for at least 18 points. The quarterback position this week is weird because I don't like Daniel Jones, but he's still in my top 13.
I know.
Because if you look at the quarter, I mean, hindsight's 2020, and Flacco and Rodgers were awesome last night, but you're not going to start those guys over Daniel Jones. So I guess it's more of a temper your expectations for Daniel Jones. He had 22.5 points last week, but he had been held under 17 in his previous 3 games. And he's got the Chargers this week. They've allowed fewer than 15 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks this season. So all I'm saying is that unless Daniel Jones gets into the end zone as a runner, which is certainly possible, I don't think he has a big game. And the same goes for Jackson Dart. He's got Denver this week. Right? Their defense has held all but 2 quarterbacks to fewer than 15 points. And the position's averaging 11.4 points per game when facing the Broncos in Denver. And again, if Jackson Dart rushes for 50 yards and a touchdown, then he's going to be useful. In Superflex, you start him. In traditional, the matchup's not great.
Yeah, and I feel like for Caleb, really quickly, I'm just getting to the point where I'm kind of blind trusting him. And maybe it's not so much him, but it's this offense. Chicago is 2nd in the NFL in explosive plays. It took them a couple weeks to get going, but it feels like the Bears are figuring things out on offense. And I'm really excited to see what the second half of the year looks like for Chicago. I'm kind of all in on Caleb Williams and the rest of this Bears offense.
Yeah. I will name drop here. Seth Rollins is one of my good friends, the world heavyweight champion. And we go back and forth and talk about the Bears all the time. And I don't know that I've ever seen him this excited about the Bears and that offense. And in fact, there's a lot of Bears I like this week, including their defense. So a lot going on in Chicago that is very positive in terms of real and fantasy. And the next few games, they've got some very winnable games coming up.
All right, let's move over to receivers. Some receivers that you must have in your starting lineup, and then one that you need to bench. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. October 10th was World Mental Health Day, and this year we're saying thank you, therapists, because life can be tough on and off the field, and behind millions of mental health journeys are therapists who showed up, listened, and helped people take a step forward. BetterHelp is shining the spotlight on these connections while also making it simple for you to find the support that you need. If you've ever thought about trying therapy, this is the perfect reminder that help is out there and the right therapist can make all of the difference. This World Mental Health Day, join us in celebrating the therapists who have helped millions take a step forward. And if you're ready to start your own journey, BetterHelp can help you find the right therapist. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right actually can get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun and simple way to add more excitement to the football season. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you are in the game. It's fun to follow some other players that maybe you don't have in your fantasy leagues or your dynasty leagues, and now you can do so on Prize Picks, and you can do it all with just one click. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are talking about the top starts and sits here in Week 7. And let's go over to the receiver position. Courtland Sutton, can you trust him this week against the Giants? I know this Giants secondary isn't particularly good, but are you putting him in your lineups?
Yeah, certainly. Last week against the other New York team, the Jets, 2.7 points. That was gross. That game was just disgusting. I've said it before, the fans in London should have gotten some sort of a refund from that stink bomb. But now you got the Giants. It's a home game for the Broncos. 9 wide receivers have scored double digits against the Giants, including 6 who've had 17-plus points. So Courtland Sutton should be back in your lineup. I mean, listen, last week was a blip on the radar. More often than not, Sutton's been very good this year from a fantasy perspective. All right, and another wide receiver, and people may think this is low-hanging fruit, but Davante Adams had just 7.9 points last week. And his numbers haven't really been like great. Right? I mean, Davante Adams, we expect, these big numbers from, but Puka Nacua is injured. And the Jaguars have allowed the most points to perimeter receivers. Like, I think Davante Adams is going to score at least 17 to 18 points this week in that game overseas. And so even though the numbers have not been great so far this year, with Puka injured, Davante Adams is going to eat. In fact, I would be, let's just say, if I'm in a deeper league, and I need help at wide receiver this week, the Rams could offer you some support. Tutu Atwell, we're not sure if he's going to play this week yet because he's a little bit banged up. But the Rams have some wide receiver options for the desperate. And I know a lot of people in dynasty leagues, there's not a lot on the waiver wire. So Atwell could end up being a guy that you're potentially going to be starting as a dart throw this week because the matchup's very good.
And the good thing here is we're going to know early whether Tutu is playing or not because that's a 9:30 Eastern kickoff. So if he's active and you need somebody in the flex spot, I think he's a good bet. And if he's out, you have plenty of time to pick up somebody else or play.
Right. I mean, you've got Jordan Whittington too. So he could also fill in that role and end up being, it's funny too, because like this week, we do have a bunch of wide receivers coming back, but we also lost a bunch of wide receivers last week, right? And we lost Puka. We lost Emeka Egbuka. We lost Garrett Wilson. So there's going to be a lot of wide receivers, and we're going to talk about that when we discuss some of the streamers that folks can fill in with in a pinch if you're in a deeper league and desperate.
Doesn't this feel like a week that Davante Adams gets like 18, 19 targets? He
Yeah,
does his
it really
Jamar
does.
Chase impression, right?
It really does, man.
And this is what Matt Stafford does really well is he gets attached to one receiver and he just peppers them with targets. And with Puka likely not playing, I don't see any reason why we're not going to hit at least double-digit targets for Davante Adams.
You would think so. Yeah, big on Adams this week.
Okay. Which receivers are you benching here in week 7?
I'm not high on Michael Pittman Jr. He's coming off the worst game of this season, 4 points against Arizona. And the Chargers defense is good. I mean, they've allowed 2 touchdowns and the third fewest points to wide receivers. In fact, only 4 have had more than 13 points against them so far this year. So I would temper expectations on Michael Pittman Jr. And also the same thing with DeVonta Smith. Like, he's been really hard to trust this year. Single digits in 4 of 6 games, Marcus. I mean, it's been that bad. And you got the Vikings. They're coming off a bye. They've given up the fewest points per game to wide receivers, and slot receivers have averaged the 3rd fewest points per game against Minnesota. And remember, Smith runs a lot of his routes on the inside. So it's just not a great matchup for DeVonta Smith. So I would beware starting him in fantasy this week.
Any other players that you are sitting at the wide receiver position here in week 7?
So when we look at some of these matchups, a lot of times, like, it's hard. Like, there are players out there that I don't know that I have a lot, like Jalen Waddle, for example. I mean, I don't know if I have a lot of trust in him in a home game against Cleveland. The Browns are playing at home and the weather's supposed to be really bad. If I have,
I think Waddle's an easy sit this week, right? Cleveland's got a really good secondary.
But Waddle's getting a lot of targets, and that's why I'm saying, like, if you have an alternative, then, like, say, for example, you have a Ladd McConkey or a Stephon Diggs, guys like that, then I could see, I got to put Waddle on the bench. But that's a guy that scares me a little bit, this week. Some of the other players that
what about Kendrick Bourne? Would you play Kendrick Bourne over Waddle this week?
Yes. If Ricky Pearsall does not play, which it looks like that's going to be the case, then yeah, that's certainly a direction I'm going. Jacoby Myers has not been good lately either. And so I'd probably be fading him in that matchup against Kansas City. But a lot of the big name wide receivers are going to be hard to sit because even though we're getting CD back and we're getting Rashee Rice back, we've lost so much this season that it makes it difficult to not play some of these big name guys, just hoping, that they give us 5 for 80 this week.
Can I ask you about Rashee Rice real quick? Because obviously you waited this long. You're going to be starting him in week 7. I saw some people over the weekend or over the last couple of days talk about how many receivers they would take over Rashee Rice. And the number is pretty small. How do you feel about Rashee Rice, not just in dynasty leagues, but for the next 10 games or so?
I mean, this week I have him in my top 10.
Yeah.
I mean, the numbers are the numbers. When he plays, Mahomes throws the ball to him. And now Mahomes could get scary because he's got Worthy, he's got Rice, he's got Kelsey. To a lesser degree, he's got Hollywood, and he's got Tyquan Thornton as well. This could be the best group of wide receivers and receivers in all, including the tight end, that maybe Mahomes has ever had.
Yeah.
And the success he's having running the ball, he's really reemerged as an elite quarterback, which was, something that you predicted.
Let's talk about tight ends really quickly. Give me one that you're starting and one that you're sitting.
So Harold Fannin, I'm going to start him this week. Last week, 66 offensive plays. David Njoku's been a little bit banged up. The Dolphins have allowed 4 tight ends, including 3 rookies, to beat them for double digits. So I like Harold Fannin. Dallas Goedert also will start him this week. I don't love TJ Hawkinson though this week. He's got the big name, Marcus, so it's hard to like out. I want to sit TJ Hawkinson. 5 games, single digits, 4 times. Eagles have given up double digits to just 2 tight ends, and neither has scored more than 13.3 points. So Hawkinson's a tough player to trust right now.
All right, let's talk about some players that you need to be streaming here in week 7. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details, and Mazda brings the same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make your everyday drives feel like anything but, with smooth handling, and fantastic controls. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. I know where I live. You have to have all-wheel drive just to survive out here, and that is where Mazda comes through in the clutch. And like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. This episode is brought to you by Rougier. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougier Go Long. Rougier Go Long isn't just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for confidence. Go Long combines 2 doctor-trusted medications in one dual-action formula so you can get hard and go the distance. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. And the process is simple. Connect with a board-certified doctor that's 100% online. And if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly right to your door. Are you ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to Rougier.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 15% off your first order. That is RUGIET.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL, and make sure to use our code so they know that we sent you. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Podcast. 2 shows every single day. 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Fabs, let's talk about some streamers. Which players are you promoting either from your bench or maybe even your waiver wires into your starting lineup here in Week 7?
Going to be a lot of these types of players this week, Marcus. I'm tempted, of course, to say Trevion Henderson, but I'm not. I'm going to go with Ramondre Stevenson. Why? Stevenson's seeing more snaps. He's seeing more touches. He's scored more fantasy points, maybe not a lot more, but the Titans have given up 10 or more points to 7 running backs, including 3 who've gone over 18. And until Trevion Henderson separates himself from Stevenson, and I don't know if that's going to happen, I've got to go with the veteran in that backfield. Kamani Vidal, who you were on last week, and even though everyone was saying, that it was going to be, Hassan Haskins, even reporters out there, and it didn't end up being the case. But, Kamani Vidal was huge last week, 138 total yards, a touchdown, almost 23 fantasy points. Now, the matchup's not as good this week against the Colts, but volume will make Kamani Vidal an RB2 flex this week. You mentioned Kendrick Bourne a little bit earlier on in the show. He's been on fire, 20 combined targets, 19 plus points in each of his last 2 games. Ricky Pearsall still banged up. The Niners, maybe George Kittle comes back this week. Maybe he doesn't.
Did you see the report
over the weekend?
Did you see the report on Kittle where he said he tore his hamstring off the bone? I don't believe that. There's no way that you're coming back after tearing your hamstring off the bone. But it does sound like he's going to be back and healthy. I just don't think that's going to impact Bourne all that much.
Yeah, Mac Jones loves him, and so you could utilize him in a pinch. Alec Manor is another player that you could use in a pinch this week. Calvin Ridley's banged up. The matchup's good. The Patriots have allowed 11 wide receivers to score double digits, including 4 who've had at least 15 points. And if you're thinking maybe game script, I mean, it's hard to put the Titans in anything but a negative game script. So you would think they'll throw the football. So Io Manor should see plenty of opportunities. And here's a guy, Marcus, I love this week. I love him. Mason Taylor. I love this kid this week. Remember, no Garrett Wilson. And I know last week he had a bad game. That was against the Broncos. But in his previous 3 games, he had seen at least 6 targets in every single game. And Carolina has allowed 5 tight ends, 5, to beat them for at least 9.9 points this season. I love Mason Taylor. I can't tell you enough. If you need tight end help, start him this week. The matchup, the opportunity, it's all there.
I want to ask you about the Commanders because I'm looking at the lines right now on FanDuel, and we've got a 55-point total in Washington, Dallas right now.
Insane. Yes.
Right now, the expectation is that Noah Brown, he's put on IR. He's not playing. Terry McLaurin was limited on practice on Wednesday, did not practice on Thursday, and now there's some doubt whether he's going to be able to go. Deebo Samuel did not practice at all on Wednesday and Thursday. Some doubt that he's not going to practice. you have to start some Washington receiver against this Cowboys defense, because why wouldn't you want free points? Who are you playing? Is it Luke McCaffrey? Is it somebody else? Who do you want in this Washington passing attack?
So would you believe me if I told you that I actually started Chris Moore last week?
I mean, that's pretty disgusting, but go ahead.
I did. In the Kings Classic, I started him. And so it would be those two. But I've heard reports that McLaurin's expected to be back this week. So I don't have any idea. We're not going to know until the Friday injury report comes out. So
it seems like if you go from limited to did not practice,
I get it.
That's usually not a great. But you could be right. No, but even if McLaurin's back, though, like do you think he's going to be 100% healthy after missing all that time?
I mean, I got to be honest with you. If 80% of Terry McLaurin's playing against the Cowboys, I'm probably still starting him.
You might not be wrong.
I'm still probably so that's something like that. Chris Moore could be another guy. Like, hey, here I am in a pinch, and McLaurin's not going to play. That's a later afternoon game. I think that's a 4:25 game.
Yeah, it's one of the only 4:25 games.
So you got to keep tabs on that. We got another 2 Monday night games, which
I know.
Load.
What about how about Zach Ertz? Because I'm looking at these big total games. I think Zach Ertz is a must start this week.
Yeah, a very good start. Yes. I would say this. Ertz is in my top 12. And if we hear reports on Friday that, McLaurin's not coming back or Debo's not coming back, whatever the case may be, or Debo's not going to play, he'll move up. But he is a very startable asset.
Last thing before we go, any other players that you want to mention to start or sit here in week 7 before we sign off?
Yeah. So streamers are going to be very valuable and very important this week. Maybe more than most weeks with 2 teams on a bye. I like Jared Goff a lot this week. I think he's a very good play. He's not a guy that people start every single week. I love the matchup against the Buccaneers. If you are desperate, I mean desperate, you could probably go with Spencer Rattler. You could do worse, maybe not much worse, but he's also a player who's worth a look. I think Tyler Algier gets enough touches to potentially be a flex starter. Kendre Miller in a matchup against the Bears, whose defense has really struggled against running backs, behind Alvin Kamara. Again, we're talking desperation, folks. Now, at wide receiver, I think there's more options. Romeo Doubs is a good play against the Cardinals this week. Sterling Shepard is a good play against the Lions. If you're really hurting, again, keep tabs on the status of Tutu Atwell this week over in London. At tight end, there's a lot of guys I actually like. I don't know if I can call Harold Fannin a streamer, but
he's probably getting started in most leagues.
But when you look over at ESPN, he's not started in more than 60% of leagues. So, and that's kind of the data that I look at. I already told you guys I love Mason Taylor. Michael Mayer against the Chiefs if Brock Bowers is out once again. And a guy that Marcus and I know well, Dalton Schultz, believe it or not, but he's got a really good matchup. He's seen 6 targets in each of his last 3 games, at least 6 targets. And the Seahawks have been bad against tight ends. So Dalton Schultz is also a streamable asset this week if you're in need.
Yeah, and Schultz doesn't provide a high ceiling, but if you've got, let's say I have Bowers in almost every league, he's not playing this week. I actually like Schultz a little bit more than Mayer just because the quarterback situation's better. His role in the offense is more defined. I think Schultz can get you, 5 catches for 50 yards. He's got a shot at scoring a touchdown. You're not going to win your week because of Dalton Schultz, but he's probably going to make sure that you don't lose that either.
Right, exactly. And earlier on in the season, I mean, he wasn't putting up great numbers, but more often than not, he's been getting looks lately. So I think he's definitely somebody that you can take a look at. And honestly, I mean, if you need help this week at defense, I'll give you a couple of defenses to stream this week too. The Chiefs are a great play against the Raiders. The Patriots are a phenomenal play this week against Tennessee. The Bears against the Saints, and the Browns against Miami.
What about the Cowboys against Washington? No,
thank you. No. I got my Michael Irvin jersey on today because I love me some Irv. I do not love me some Cowboys defense this week.
There you go. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. He is Michael Fabiano. Follow him on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you guys right back here on Monday.